I feel like the net is closing in on Mr. Integrity, Mr. Rules, Mr. Morality, our Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. Yesterday it emerged that Sir Keir had lessons from an actress in his office on Christmas Eve when London was in Tier 4 COVID restrictions. Now, he got very angry when people asked if he'd broken any rules.
Front. Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank you.
Of course not.
Was your voice coach definitely a key word? Yeah, he got a bit shirty there, didn't he? But then it emerged that the voice coach and actress, Leonie Mellinger, appeared to have travelled from a Tier 3 to a Tier 4 area in order to meet with the Labour leader in person. This would be against the rules. Labour initially tried to claim she was a key worker, but today it emerged that she was not officially employed by the Labour Party at the time of her little visit to Labour HQ. So it appears that rules were broken, and the key worker line doesn't quite hold water either. Well, after all, ask yourself this. If you wanted to receive lessons from an actress in your office on Christmas Eve, do you think that would have been allowed? I suspect not. There are other problems for Sir Keir, aren't there? The fact that his voice coach was advertising her services in an online capacity. She was not simply doing face-to-face meetings. So there you go. You can see the advert there, the proof that she was doing online lessons. So why did she have to go and see the leader of the opposition in person? It seems especially odd considering that Sir Keir reportedly cancelled Labour's Christmas party when London was moved into Tier 3 restrictions, and he went into isolation for about 10 days when a member of his private office tested positive for COVID. Just 8 days after that isolation period, it appears that he was happy to meet the voice coach in his office after she had travelled between tiers to get there. That's certainly the allegation anyway. According to reports, he had previously been willing to meet her online. So why that sudden change? There are other issues for Keir Starmer, of course. Here he is, doing his holier-than-thou impression for the umpteenth time in the House of Commons.
Yeah.
And we understand that the rules apply to all of us.
Yeah.
This morning, I spoke to John Robinson, a constituent of the member for Lichfield. I want to tell you his story. When his wife died of COVID, John and his family obeyed the Prime Minister's rules. Doesn't the Prime Minister realise that John would have given the world to hold his dying wife's hand, even if it was just for 9 minutes?
I wonder if he's tracked down John Robinson just to ask him how he feels about Keir Starmer meeting an actress in his office on Christmas Eve. The other problem for the Prime Minister is this. His government has a record disapproval rating of around 64%. His personal approval ratings are shocking as well. It is rumoured that 2 members of his cabinet have started leadership manoeuvres behind the scenes. One of his own MPs was on GBNews this morning, refusing to say that he should resign, he should not resign, by the way, if he's done anything wrong.
This is all hypothetical and speculation. It's the same MP that started that last investigation that is starting this one. We want to get on with changing the country.
She doesn't say he shouldn't resign, though, does she? Yesterday, the Met Police told GB News that they could not investigate anything because nobody had reported it to them. Well, now, quite a few people have, and we are yet to hear if they will open an investigation. As it stands, both the Prime Minister and the actress deny any wrongdoing, but I have a feeling this may turn out to be a very expensive lesson. Let's get thoughts from our panel this evening. We, of course, do have columnist and broadcaster Esther Cracker. We've also got GB News presenter Alex Armstrong and journalist Jonathan Liss. Now, Esther, I wouldn't care about this had Keir Starmer not been so monumentally pious about the whole situation before. You know, he was Mr. Rules, Mr. Integrity, and hang on a minute, it does very much look like rules were broken in this case. Should he go?
Well, if he did break the rules, yes, but I don't think he did. Now, I completely agree with you. I couldn't care less about who broke the COVID rules because we now know they were stupid and they were arbitrary and they just made no sense, and so many people were separated from their loved ones when they really shouldn't have been. However, this lady, the speech coach, happens to be the wife of Anthony Burton, who opened a legal aid charity with Keir Starmer and ran it for 15 years. So they do have sort of family-friend ties. So they can rightly say, you know, she was a family friend. She wasn't in any sort of professional capacity when she was in Keir Starmer's company during the lockdown, which is fine. I think the bigger point
They're
is
not
why.
saying that, though, are they?
Well, but that's what's come out. That is her husband. I think the bigger point is why is this coming out? And people are digging into Keir Starmer because he has basically developed a reputation where he just goes back on his word. So it wouldn't surprise people if actually he broke lockdown rules because he's decided to basically go back on anything else he said.
She wasn't, just to be clear, at that moment in time, nobody was allowed to travel between Tier 3 and Tier 4 areas. And that's what she did, Alex.
That is the catch, isn't it? She shouldn't have travelled 50 miles to go and see him in person, whether it was a professiontional
Maybe she saw
capacity.
his wife.
So you're not allowed to travel. That's the point.
But we're linking this to the Prime Minister. Maybe she wants to see his wife.
But still, OK, if that's the case, then I'm sure his wife was living with him at the time. But that's not what we're assuming here. We're assuming their personal connection is between them two. Either way, we know that he was taking vocal lessons from her during the pandemic, which raises the question, did he breach the rules? I think he did. I think this is four-tier Keir. It's pretty obvious to me. He's breached the rules. He sat there and he flaunted to everyone else saying, you must obey the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's rules, even, attacked Boris Johnson for months on this. It's just one rule for him and another rule for everybody else.
Why couldn't she have just done her job over Zoom, Jonathan?
Patrick, I've been doing this show for a long time. This is the most desperate thing I've ever heard on this programme.
Let's say that when Partygate happened.
Look, this was 4 years ago. If anyone broke the rules, it was the voice coach, not him. There was a perfectly legitimate work reason, which we've already discussed. He wasn't in government at the time, he wasn't in government at the time. And the most important thing is the most important thing.
All the people who got fined for sitting on park benches with a cup of coffee with their mates who weren't in government.
And you know what?
And they had to pay COVID.
Patrick, you know what?
Keir Starmer said this. I want longer, harder, faster, never-ending lockdowns. That's what he said at the time. But if you're an actress, you can wander into his office.
I don't think that Starmer was ever at a pulpit like Priti Patel and Boris Johnson calling for tougher sentences for people who were guilty of minor infractions of the rules. Now, if you look at these rules, and I said this at the time, and I'll say it again, the rules were absolutely ridiculous. They were totally impenetrable. No one knew what they were. They were introduced 15 minutes before they took effect, without any parliamentary approval after the first introduction of the permission for government to do that. They were totally stupid, and no one should ever have been criminalised. No one should ever have been criminalised for minor infractions of the rules.
Were publicly backed by Keir Starmer. You've just said they were ridiculous, but he backed them all the way through and wanted even tougher sanctions. So
he didn't want tougher. But when was he calling for tougher sanctions?
I literally played a clip last night, days after he's supposed to. The day that Boris Johnson introduced those Tier 4 rules, of Keir Starmer saying that the tier system hadn't worked and actually we needed.
No, that's not what I said. I said for criminal sanctions. When did he call for tougher criminal sanctions for people who broke lockdown rules?
Okay, broken the tiers, Jonathan.
He also did stand up in the House of Commons not that long ago and called Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson criminals for their negligence during COVID. So he does associate it quite clearly, the breaking of the COVID rules, with some sort of criminal act. Otherwise, why would that have come to his head?
The man is so bad.
He is a two-tier Keir. He's now four-tier Keir. The man has got to resign.
Stop trying to make fetch happen, Alex.
No, he's got to go. He's got to go, Jonathan. The public have had enough of him. His approval ratings are through the floor. Now he's the guy that sat there and told everyone else how to behave during one of the most difficult crises. People couldn't go and see their loved ones. Men weren't allowed to watch their children be born. He's now broken those rules. It's quite obvious to anyone. It's not taking a rocket scientist to figure this out. He's got to resign. He's got to go, and he said he would.
The difficulty is, Jonathan, which is that, as strongly as you might support him, the initial response to the Labour Party was not he's not done anything wrong. It was that this happened a long time ago when he was in opposition. Then, unfortunately for you and Keir Starmer, his next line was, of course nothing has happened that's wrong. And now it turns out that, stuff did happen that was wrong.
Well, I'm sorry, but I haven't seen... this is ridiculous. I haven't seen anything that you just said that is prima...
Tier 3 to tier...
Well, if someone resigned...
I can't remember if you were allowed to do that if you had an acceptable work excuse, because obviously we know that people are allowed to travel to work.
Speech coach,
She's a speech coach.
Vital worker.
Working with him for 2.5 years. There is no way that on Christmas Eve, that evening, it was absolutely necessary.
Not only that,
even
Patrick,
if that was, first of two things, even if that was true, that would have been her breach of the rules, not his. And second of all, this is so unbelievably petty. I cannot believe that we are even having this
nobody
conversation.
was saying that.
I'm literally telling you, I was writing articles at the time to say these rules are completely
went to Lord Ali's
insane.
apartment during
I said it at the time.
He went to Lord Ali's apartment during
Passed it off as his own.
Passed it off as his own place.
Yeah.
He went to the beer and curry night during COVID.
Oh, he was working there.
He was busy working.
For which he was completely exonerated by the police. Look, you can't have it both ways.
Now he's got
you can't have
a
it both ways.
Tell me, am I mad?
Yes,
it seems to me
you are.
This is
You are mad.
I'm
absolutely
sorry,
ridiculous.
I have to agree with Jonathan here. This is very petty.
Of course,
So,
it is.
thank you, Esther. So
Who started
stupid.
it
Who
all?
started it?
Exactly.
We don't have to continue it.
We do.
Well,
we
in a
do.
way,
No, we really don't have to continue it.
It's got to be held
And
to
if
the
any,
same
by the
account.
way,
He's got to be held to the same account he's held everybody else in this country to. He cannot sit on his high horse and tell everyone else in this country how they should behave when he can't do the same.
Twisted by his own petard.
No, well, that's
Twisted
absolutely
by his
rubbish.
own petard.
And by the way, I said that after the whole Partygate thing, I said that the police should cancel every single conviction for COVID because I said it at the time, Patrick. And if the Prime Minister couldn't even follow his own rules, how could he expect anyone else to? The whole thing that was so misgoverned. The laws are completely absurd. I hope we never go through anything similar again.
It happened when he did this. Let's be clear. It wasn't like Keir Starmer said, "Oh, the Prime Minister's not doing it."
Anyway, I hope Look, he's going to have to try and start it out. But the problem is that every single day more and more starts coming out about this, doesn't it? And so we'll wait and see what tomorrow holds. But anyway, I will just say again, if I had it my way, no one would have ever been done for any of these ridiculous COVID rules. But to stand there and say that, John Richardson couldn't see his wife, bless him, all of this stuff. Hang on a minute, how was Keir Starmer's life really impacted? Was it impacted in the same way as everybody else's? I'm not sure it was. But anyway, moving on.